Hey everybody, this is D Hunter, bringing another action figure review. Today, we're going to look at the McFarlane DC Multiverse Walmart exclusive Gold Label Collection Parallax. This is essentially an evil Hal Jordan. He was possessed by Parallax, and he eventually killed the entire Green Lantern Corps. This guy's a Walmart exclusive, and I've been looking and looking and looking for him with absolute no success. Another action figure reviewer out there, he runs a channel called Bones the Necro Zoo. He mentioned getting two of these guys. I offered to buy one, and he said no thanks, he wants to keep one in the package. Later, I stumbled across a bunch of Owlman figures. Asked if he wanted one, he said yes. He ended up being willing to trade, and I cannot stress to you how much I appreciate that. Thank you, Bones and the Necro Zoo. 2 thumbs up. Love the action figure community. Always helping each other out. I will put a link to his YouTube channel in case you want to check it out in the description below. So let's go ahead and check out the packaging. As you can see at the top, 22 moving parts, McFarlane toys, McFarlane Gold Label Collection, ages 12 plus, DC Multiverse Parallax. Here he is in the packaging. He's got a lantern, a couple of constructs, and then what appears to be a display stand and collector's card. One side of the package, Parallax from Green Lantern Emerald Twilight. Other side simply says Parallax. At the bottom, got a bunch of credits, and there is a barcode in case it helps anybody. And on the back side, here's Hal posed up as Parallax. Walmart exclusives are the hardest one, at least for me to find, so I'm really appreciate being able to check this off my list. So no further ado, let's open them up. Alright, now that we got this figure out of the package, here he is with all the accessories laid out. He does come with a display stand, a collector's card, a lantern charger, and then 2 sort of constructs. They're going to go around his hand so he can punch with the force of a construct behind his fists. But before we take a look at those accessories, let's talk about and check out the actual figure. So this is Hal Jordan. He's possessed by Parallax. In the comics, Coast City was destroyed and he was devastated. He went to the Guardians and demanded them to resurrect and restore Coast City. When they refused, he absorbed all the Lantern energy, became very powerful, but Parallax was imprisoned and he released him and absorbed him at the same time. At that point, he went around killing and decimating other lanterns. At one time, he had 10 different power rings and became so powerful, he ended up taking out the entire Green Lantern Corps. Eventually, Hal Jordan ended up sacrificing himself, and he was gone in the comics for a few years. He made things right, and eventually they brought him back and everything was status quo. So let's take a look at him. Starting off with his face here, looks pretty good. Mask, looks a little more like Hal Rayner's mask than the typical Hal Jordan mask. His hair, it's mostly black. Sculpting's pretty good, kind of slicked back. And then we have some gray at the bottom of the back of his head. Large shoulder pads. He has sort of the Green Lantern outfit, but it's missing the Green Lantern logo in the middle there. Double jointed elbows, double jointed knees, double ball joints in his torso area. You can see his abs there. Little texturing and lines down his suit. He's got armor on top of the black part of his suit. Cape looks pretty good. Looks kind of familiar. Tips of his hands made with a semi-transparent green plastic. Overall, I'd say this guy is well done. A little more figures from the 90s. Thank you, McFarlane. I'm enjoying that. And I just wanted to give another shout out to Bones from the Necro Zoo. I really appreciate getting this figure. He's saving me from having to stop at Walmart every single day on the way home from work. That is a huge burden lifted. Big time saver. I've probably gone there at least 10 times looking for this guy. And just a closer look at his head and face sculpt. Now let's take a look at his accessories, and let's start off with the boring stuff. Typical McFarlane stand, black perfect circle, says DC on the bottom. It's got 1 peg for the peg holes on his feet. Very thin, very basic. Now let's take a look at his collector's card. As you can see, it's an image of Hal Jordan Parallax from the comics. Parallax from Green Lantern Emerald Twilight. I like when they show the source material and don't just simply show an image of the figure. On the back side, there is a description. If you want to read that, go ahead and pause now. Now we have his lantern charger. It's made of a semi-transparent green plastic, which is very odd. Their lantern charger is not a construct. It's an actual physical item. McFarlane doesn't seem to get that. They make it appear to be a construct. Now, in addition to that, he got so powerful he didn't actually need the lantern charger, so it's kind of odd they would include this accessory with the figure. Here's Parallax's lantern on the left, next to Kyle Rayner's lantern on the right. It's a more modern version of the lantern charger. And here it is, next to the Black Lantern, Deathstorm's lantern charger. They very easily could have just released the same sculpt and repainted it, but it's a completely different accessory. And here it is, next to both the Mattel lantern on the left and a couple of NECA versions on the right. Here he is holding and carrying his lantern accessory. Here's Hal Jordan, charging up his power ring with the lantern charger. Now this accessory doesn't actually make any sense for this character, as Parallax didn't use the charger and didn't even have a power ring after he got all of his power. One thing they did get right, they didn't include a power ring on his hand at all. So, you get this accessory that's not appropriate for this figure, but you can definitely use it for some other Green Lanterns. Then he has these two energy effects. They're sort of Green Lantern constructs that'll fit around his hands. It's made of that semi-transparent green material. You can see where his fist will go inside. And they're a completely different sculpt from the giant Green Lantern fist construct that came with the other Hal Jordan figure. Here's Parallax with one of those two constructs on his fist. And here's Parallax with both of those constructs on both of his fists. Here are all the different Lantern constructs that come with McFarlane's various Green Lantern figures. Let's see if they work with Parallax here. We'll get rid of these backpacks, as he doesn't have a peg hole on his back to accommodate them. And we'll get rid of these bat constructs from Dawnbreaker. Here he is with the other fisted construct that comes with the standard version of Hal Jordan from the 2-pack with Dawnbreaker. And then this armor piece. It doesn't actually fit over his head. I could pop his head off and then put it on, but it would just look bad, as it's got these sort of shoulder pads that would be trying to go on top of. Here he is, holding Kyle Rayner's sword. Here he is, with the gun construct that came with the animated John Stewart. And here, with the minigun that came with the comic version of John Stewart. Now they've taken a pretty good look at both the figure and his accessories. Now let's check out his height. From bottom to the top of his head, he's standing at about 7.25 inches tall, which can translate to about 18.5 centimeters. Now let's check out his articulation. Start with his head here. Of course, it can rotate from side to side. It can look up about that far, down about that far. It can tilt his head from one side to the other. Shoulders on a ball joint. Goes up more than 90 degrees. Up, down, around, all the good stuff. He does have a butterfly joint between his shoulder and chest area, increasing the range of motion and covering up that gap that would be there. Bicep cut below that. Double jointed elbows that go all the way in. His wrists can rotate, and it's going to be hinged as well. Ball joint in his torso, rotate around, forward and back. Another one is waist, rotate around, forward and back, giving him pretty good range of motion in his torso area. Legs, complete dust of splits. Not a ball joint, but a similar type concept. Rotation is pretty decent. Legs go forward about that far. Back, not much. Double jointed knees below that. Then his ankle here. Forward and back. Rotate, tilt, rock, and toe articulation. Here's Parallax, standing on top of the corpses of many different Green Lanterns. He took many of them out, took all their power rings, and became so powerful. Eventually, he took out the entire Green Lantern Corps. Now let's check him out, next to some other action figures. Starting off with some other McFarlane DC Multiverse figures. Here's Parallax, next to the standard version of Hal Jordan. They only released Hal Jordan in the 2-pack with Dawnbreaker. I imagine Hal Jordan will get another future release in one way, shape, or form. I'm really surprised they didn't re-release this 2-pack figure as a single release. Maybe a gold label edition with different colored gloves. And then, next to the comic version of John Stewart, here's Parallax, next to the animated version of John Stewart. And here he is, next to the Kyle Rayner Green Lantern. Here are all the different Green Lantern figures McFarlane has made so far. I'm not even aware of what the next one's going to be. Here's Parallax, next to all the McFarlane Red Lantern figures they've made so far. This is Atrocitus. The next one they're making is Batrocidus. And here he is, next to all the different Black Lantern figures. Can't wait to have Necron leading these guys. Now let's check him out, next to some other recently released McFarlane DC Multiverse figures. Here he is, next to the recent wave of Page Punchers, which I thought was complete, but then they went ahead and announced a black and white Black Adam. I have that on pre-order, but until I have him in hand, my Series 1 is incomplete. Here's Parallax, next to the recent Black Adam movie wave. And here he is, next to the Blackest Night wave, collective build Atrocitus. Here's Parallax, next to the most recent figures I got from the McFarlane Toy Store. We have Future State Superman, Infinite Frontier Scarecrow, and the new 52 Static Shock. Then, next to both versions of Martian Manhunter, Classic and Rebirth. And now, next to the Target exclusive Crime Syndicate wave, Ultraman, Superwoman, and Owlman. Here's Parallax, next to all three different versions of Lex Luthor in his power suit. Then, with both versions of the Dark Detective Batman. And here, next to the McFarlane Toy Store exclusive gold label paint variations of the Arkham Knight Scarecrow and Arkham Knight Red Hood. Then, next to the Tales of the Dark Multiverse Duke Thomas and the Batman Who Laughs dressed as Batman. Here's Parallax, next to the Batman vs. Hush 2-pack. Then, next to the single release of Hush. And here he is, next to Ghostmaker. And now, next to the McFarlane Toy Store exclusive gold label unmasked variants of the Zernar Batman and the Infinite Frontier Robin. Here's Parallax, next to Grifter and the Arkham Knight. Then, with the Tim Drake Red Robin and the John Kent Superboy. Here he is, next to the CW's Arrowverse TV Flash and the comic version of Godspeed. Then, next to Injustice 2's Green Arrow and Reverse Flash. And finally, next to the two most recent Mega figures, Killer Croc and Man-Bat, at least before the Black Adam Mega figures came out, and people are starting to receive their Bane and Necron at this point. Now let's check them out, next to all my different Green Lantern and Lantern figures. Here are all the different McFarlane Green Lantern figures they've made. Then, next to my DC Direct and DC Collectibles Green Lantern figures. Here's Parallax, next to my NECA Green Lanterns. And then, with my Mattel DC Universe Classics and Multiverse Green Lanterns. Here he is, next to a Fisher-Price League of DC Super Pets Green Lantern. Here are all of my different Hal Jordan figures. I'm missing a ton of them. Then, next to all my different Yellow Lantern Sinestro Corps figures. Here's Parallax, next to all the different Red Lantern figures that I have. Just the one. And here he is, with all the Black Lanterns I have. Now let's check him out, next to some action figures from different various companies, to see how he fits in both scale and style-wise, in case you want to know which lines you can mix him with. Since he's a McFarlane figure, they're typically the 7-inch scale. I'm going to start off my comparisons with some of the large action figure lines I collect, and work way smaller. But first, let's check him out with some of his McFarlane Toys brothers. In front of you are 5 different action figure lines, all from McFarlane Toys, all 7-inch scale. Then, with some more McFarlane Toys, these are from different various video game properties. And now, next to some Jakks-specific wrestling figures. And here he is, next to some DST or Diamond Select toys. Then, with some DC Direct and DC Collectibles figures. And here, standing next to some NECA figures. Then, with some Mattel wrestling figures. And now, with some Jazzwares AEW wrestlers. And here he is, next to some Mezco 112 collective figures. Then, with some Mattel DC Universe Classics and Multiverse figures. And here he is, next to some Mafex figures. Then, next to some Hasbro Marvel Legends. And here he is, next to some SH Figure Arts action figures. And finally, next to some Jazzwares Fortnite figures. Overall, he's a very nice figure. Love all the 90s stuff McFarlane's been putting out right now. Speeding Bullets, Batman, Nightfall Azrael, Parallax Hal Jordan. I'm expecting to see some Death and Return of Superman stuff soon. But I don't really need a Parallax-possessed Hal Jordan. I much prefer a regular Hal Jordan. He's useful in way more different action figure scenarios. This Parallax version is really very specific for certain scenes. That being said, His accessories are pretty cool. The constructs and the lantern. Sculpt and paint job are excellent. No real issues there. Only problem is he has one little bit of black in the middle of his gray hair on the back of his head. Articulation is everything you would expect from a McFarlane DC Multiverse figure. If I were to rate this guy, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. He's a good figure, but not really a necessary one in the overall world building collection. So this is D Hunter. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked the video, press like below. If you have anything you want to say with the video, add to the comment section. If you want to see additional action figure reviews from me, press subscribe. I do appreciate when you do that. Once again, this is D Hunter. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I will talk to you guys real soon.